Originally from Limerick, Newcastle West in Limerick in Ireland. And then I worked for 20 years for Dell. Eventually moving to Malaysia for a couple of years, and then to China for a few years. And eventually we ended up in Austin, and the idea was we'd only move to Austin for 2 years, keep the rotation going. Wife, family, everybody coming with me. And then eventually we decided we liked Austin, so we stayed around. My last job at Dell was Vice President of Product Management. So it was pretty cool transformation, all the way from factory employee all the way up to VP. What happened, for those that don't know, is that on the 4th of July last year, there was a flash flood happened in a place called Kerr County in Texas. Over 120 people were killed. A friend of mine who lost friends and had his kids in camp called me up and said, we got to do something about this. So he's an ex-military guy. He used to work in the Navy, dealing with threat mitigation. His theory was that, we know where the threat is coming from, we know where the people are, and we know where the threat is going. So this has got to be technologically possible. So we started to look at flood technologies and defenses that were out there at the time. Did a little bit of market research. I was still working for Dell at the time, and he was an airline pilot. And it turns out that we treat like floods like a science project. We feed people data rather than treating them like what they should be, which is a life-critical, time-critical emergency, like a fire in a hotel. When we looked at all the technology that's out there, we realized that the obvious solution was never developed, and nobody did the obvious solution. It's to build a fire alarm for floods. Same technology, same idea, detect when it's flooding, and then get people out of the way, wake them up in the middle of the night and move them out of the way immediately. Do not give them data, do not give them an opportunity to make the wrong decision. Just make the decision for them and move them out of the way instantly. Texas has the highest flash flood death record in the United States, one of the highest in the world, because of topography, the extreme environment, the weather, and how it happens and stuff like that. So what are we trying to do? We're trying to prevent a very preventable tragedy from happening every single year, and it does happen every year. So what we don't try to do is, people love AI, and AI is fantastic for certain applications, right? For most applications, AI is brilliant. It's the way of the future. Okay, data is fantastic for most applications. It's the way of the future, all that stuff. But for life-threatening, time-critical emergencies, data is your enemy. Predictive analytics that doesn't predict stuff correctly or hasn't got a refined process. How long have we been predicting the weather? 200 years, maybe 200, maybe more than that, maybe 1,000 years. We still get it wrong every second day around here. So we decided in the very beginning we were not going to rely on any technologies that had failed in the past. We were not going to do predictive analytics. We are not going to play the dangerous guessing game that everybody else tries to play with this. We're not going to rely on the internet. We're not going to rely on cell phone signals, and we're not going to rely on the power grid. Why? Because they're the first 3 things that go in any flash flood, is those 3 things. And these flash floods that happen, that kill people, they don't happen in the middle of the day, they happen at nighttime. 80% of all flood deaths in Texas happen at nighttime. So how is our technology different? We don't text your cell phone. We don't have a warning tower 4 miles away. We installed a river Sentry system right outside where you're sleeping. So right now down in Kerrville, there's 100 of these installed. The installation is nearly finished. How does it work? First of all, we crossed the first principle. It can never have false alarms. It does not rely on predictive analytics. We install it between the river and where people are sleeping. We put it right in the middle. We guard a line. We draw a line down along the riverbank, and we say, if water gets to this line, then we've got to wake everybody up in this location and start them moving out of the way. That is the first principle of it. Why next to the buildings? Well, because the speaker system in this produces 135 decibels. And then the last piece of the alarm is the background air raid siren from the United States Army, something that you'd never hear in terrestrial United States. The next thing we get to is we got to light that egress route. Look, those lights provide stadium-style lighting uphill, away from danger. The other thing that we built into this is redundancy, because we don't want any single failure point in this system. The engineers thought we were crazy, but yet we've got 2 inside it. So we got 2 ways of detecting the water, 2 ways of waking you up, 2 ways of lighting your egress path. Redundancy. That's why we're different than everybody else. Technology, this isn't new technology. We just put it together in a new soup, a new formula, just to put all these components together to make them do what we wanted them to do. probably the hardest part initially was like getting the right people engaged was important initially. We needed people that were used to dealing with threat mitigation. They were used to dealing with emergencies. So if you look at the folks that are on our team right now, we've got an airline pilot who is used to all the redundancy and all that kind of stuff, and used to dealing with threats, and is very, very, very highly trained. He's an ex-naval pilot, used to hunt submarines for a living, so used to dealing with threats like that. We also have an ex-Austin Police Department sergeant on our crew as well. Finding people that are willing to do that in the beginning, that are able and willing to take their own initiative and make that happen, it can be challenging in the beginning. I was lucky enough that I had the resources of the Irish Business Network at my disposal, which is an organisation that I helped to found a couple of years ago. You'll be surprised at who you'll meet through that organisation. There's multiple layers of society, people with all different skill sets, from data entry or entry-level jobs all the way up to C-suite jobs, and everybody in between across multiple different industries. So being able to, I guess, navigate that network and connect with the right people at the right time when we needed help. And some people just came in for a few weeks to help us out on a kind of a contract basis. Other people have become permanent members of our company. That was probably the most challenging piece of it. And like ultimately what it meant for us founders is like we work for free because this is a passion project rather than anything else. And in the end, this became a full-time job. Our mission is to stop flash flood deaths, period. And in order to do that, we're starting here, ground zero, Kerrville, expanding out Texas, expanding out the United States, expanding out worldwide. That's the idea of this.